They say autumn carries the breath of the dead. The air hums with the scent of wood smoke and rain. In every flickering lantern, a soul still lingers. Tonight, we walk between the worlds once more. You stand upon the trembling edge of the world. The air is thick with peat smoke and the damp breath of the hills. Mist curls like white fingers over the fields, and every shadow seems alive, listening. Somewhere beyond the ridges, a drum begins to beat. Slow, steady, ancient, as though the earth itself remembers a rhythm older than speech. It is the night before the dark half of the year. The harvest is gathered. The last sheaves of barley rest in woven baskets. The cattle are herded down from the pastures. And across the land, the people of Air prepare for Samhain, the turning. You can almost feel it in your bones. The year exhaling. At the heart of every hill, fires rise. Bonfires so vast, they paint the low clouds orange, their sparks drifting like stars torn loose from the heavens. The people circle them in silence first. Farmers, mothers, hunters, children, their faces lit in flickering gold. Then come the druids, white-robed, carrying torches from the sacred flame. They speak words few remember now. Not prayers exactly, but promises. They offer the first cuts of meat, a handful of grain, the smoke of apples and honey. For this night is not for the living alone. It belongs to those who came before. You can smell the roasting flesh, the sweetness of cider, the sharp sting of wet earth. The fires crackle like hungry gods, devouring the year that has died. Someone plays a bone flute. The melody winds through the night, thin and mournful, and for a moment, the world feels transparent, as if all that separates you from the dead is the wavering flame. This is how it was believed, that on Samhain, the veil between worlds grew thin as morning mist. The dead walked again, not in horror, but in memory, called home by smoke and warmth. Families set out seats by the hearth, laid food upon the threshold, whispered the names of those long gone, but fear lingered too. For not all spirits were kind. Some wandered lost, cold, hungry, jealous of breath, and so masks were worn, crude faces of hide and ash, carved wood, painted bone. Children and grown alike disguised themselves, hoping to fool whatever drifted out of the dark. Imagine it. The flicker of firelight on painted skulls, laughter echoing just a shade too late. Someone dances with a branch of burning straw. Sparks whirl upward like ghosts taking flight. From beyond the hills, the wind rises, carrying the scent of rain and iron. A storm is coming, though no one moves to flee it. You hear a chant begin, low, repetitive. The druids lift their staffs, tracing circles in the air. They mark the boundaries, the space between what is seen and what is felt. Their words fall into rhythm with the wind, and as they do, the animals still. The dogs stop barking. Even the fire seems to lean closer. Then silence, the kind of silence that hums, heavy and expectant. A moment stretched so thin you could almost see through it. In the stillness, a belief stirs, that the door has opened. Some claim they saw lights moving among the stones, drifting like lanterns on the air. Others swore they heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling the fire's edge. One old woman said she felt her husband's hand brush hers, 30 winters after his death. Was it true? Perhaps not, but it was real enough to those who stood there. Breath caught, hearts trembling, certain that something unseen had crossed over. For that was the heart of Samhain, not terror, but contact. A reminder that death was not a wall, only a passage. As the night deepens, offerings are thrown into the flames. Grain for the gods, bones for the ancestors, smoke for the sky. It is both farewell and invitation. the promise of return when the sun is reborn. You can almost taste the ash on your tongue, bitter and sweet, the flavor of endings. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howl. Their cries blend with laughter and the rustle of leaves. Someone begins to tell a story, a tale of a hero who ventured beyond the veil, who met the dead and returned with prophecy. The listeners lean closer, the firelight reflected in their eyes like small, golden moons. And through it all, the wind keeps whispering, soft, circular, ancient, carrying the names of things long forgotten. The year is dying, but in its death lies the seed of another. That is the secret of Samhain. The darkness is not the end. It is the waiting. You glance toward the hills. Their slopes glow faintly, dotted with distant fires, each one a heartbeat against the void. For miles around, the land is alive, flickering, breathing, remembering. In the glow, you see faces that are not faces, figures half born of smoke, half born of thought. They drift at the edge of vision, patient as dusk. No one screams, no one runs. The people know this dance. They have lived with it since before memory had a name. When the veil thins, they do not fight it. They light their fires brighter, sing louder, love harder, because to honor the dead is to keep the living whole. As the night wanes, the great fires begin to dim. Ash settles like soft gray snow over the fields. The druids extinguish the last embers with sacred water, murmuring to the east where dawn will rise. Smoke curls upward in thin silver ribbons, vanishing into the paling sky. And when the final spark fades, you realize the air has changed. It is colder now. Still, a faint echo remains. Footsteps, laughter, whispers, fading back into the unseen. The people leave in silence, carrying small flames home in earthen bowls. They will relight their hearths with this fire, a gift from the gods, a bridge between years. And for the next season, the world will sleep beneath its blanket of frost and shadow, dreaming of return. You stand a moment longer, watching the horizon glow faintly. The hills seem to breathe, slow and content. In that breath, you feel the weight of centuries, of belief, of ritual, of fear made beautiful. The wind sighs once more, tugging at your cloak. You could swear it carries a voice, a whisper, a promise. The veil is never truly closed. And as the mist folds back over the land, the fires beneath the hills still glow. Faint, patient, eternal. You wake to the sound of wind, not the soft kind that brushes grass in daylight, but a hollow, mournful wind that feels alive. Slipping through cracks, sighing across the stones, whispering names you almost recognize. The night of Samhain has deepened, and with it, the walls between worlds grow thin as mist. You can taste the cold in your lungs. Smoke lingers from the fires that burned at dusk. The bonfires upon the hills now faded to red coals. In the distance, dogs bark once, then fall silent. Even the cattle in their pens seem uneasy, shifting in slow rhythm as if some invisible tide moves through them. This is the night the living make room for the dead. You can see the small gestures everywhere. A loaf of bread left by a window, a cup of milk beside the door, a single candle burning low and steady on the hearth. They are offerings, invitations, really, left for those who once had flesh, who once warmed these same hearths. And yet, even as the villagers whisper prayers to their ancestors, there is fear behind the reverence. For the veil does not choose who may pass through. Beneath the comfort of family spirits, other things move. Things without name, without mercy, drawn to the warmth of breath. You can almost hear them. A soft rustle beyond the thatch walls, a step too light to be human, a sigh too close to the ear. Outside, the night seems to breathe. In ancient air, they said this was the hinge of the year, when the living and the dead shared the same road for a night. To travel after dark was to risk meeting the fair folk, the Aos, not fair as in kind, but fair as in dangerous, radiant other. Their courts, hidden in the green mounds by day, opened under starlight. Sometimes they borrowed mortal faces, the faces of the dead, to walk among the breathing. So you stay close to the fire. The hearth crackles low, casting orange light that dances across clay walls. You watch the shadows, how they twist when the flame flickers, how one seems to linger longer than it should. The villagers know this too. That's why the candles burn. Light, they say, confuses what belongs to darkness. A child coughs in a nearby bed. An old woman murmurs a charm under her breath. A string of sounds learned from her grandmother, who learned them from the stones. No one knows what they mean anymore, only that they feel older than words. The night stretches on. You imagine the roads outside, long and slick with frost, marked by the faint glimmer of lanterns left on stiles and crossroads. The dead, it is said, travel those paths home. If they find the way lit, they will pass in peace. If they find it dark, they may wander, confused, angry, hungry. Somewhere in the dark, you hear a knock, soft, deliberate, 3 times. You freeze, the door remains closed, the flame trembles, no one moves, because the rules are clear. On Samhain night, when the air smells of peat and dying leaves, you do not answer the door. If it is a friend, they will speak your name. If it is not, silence is your only shield. The knock comes again, and then nothing. Only the wind, slipping through the thatch, curling around your ear like a breath. You think of the stories told by the elders, of men who left food for their ancestors but forgot to bless it, of travelers who followed a lantern through the bog, only to find no hand holding it. They say those who mock the unseen are marked, that they vanish by morning, their hearth cold, their names never spoken again. Still, not all who pass are cruel. Some spirits bring warning, a voice in a dream, a scent of flowers that bloom only on graves, a hand brushing your shoulder as you sleep. Sometimes they come not to haunt, but to remind that time is not a line but a circle, that the living are only the dead, not yet remembered. You find yourself listening for footsteps outside. Part of you is afraid, part of you is curious. There is something ancient in that curiosity. The same hunger that led humans to light fires in caves and name constellations after gods. We have always wanted to know what waits beyond the dark. The wind changes. It carries voices now, faint as memory, laughter, weeping, something like a lullaby. The language is old, full of vowels and hums, impossible to understand yet heavy with meaning. For a moment, you think you see figures in the fog outside. Tall, thin shapes drifting between cottages, pausing at each door, as if remembering. The old woman by the fire stirs. She whispers, "They've come home." Her tone is not fear, but recognition. She rises, takes a crust of bread, and places it on the threshold. A peace offering, a boundary. Outside, a shadow passes. The air warms slightly, just for an instant, and the candle flame bends toward the door, as though bowing. Then the moment passes. The warmth fades. Only the steady crackle of the fire remains. You look into the flames and think of the year that has died, of harvests and storms, of faces lost and voices dimmed. You think of how every ending leaves something behind, waiting for remembrance. Maybe that is all Samhain truly is, a night for memory to find its way home. But as dawn approaches, another sound rises. Laughter again, louder this time, high and sweet, like flutes carved from bone. It moves through the air like music and vanishes toward the hills. The old woman crosses herself, though no priest has ever set foot here. They're returning, she whispers, back through the mounds before the sun wakes. Her voice softens, almost fond. You must never look as they go, you do not. You keep your eyes fixed on the dying coals, on the faint lines of heat still shimmering above them. The first light of morning creeps through the cracks. The world shifts, quiet and ordinary again. But you know what you felt? That slight thinning in the air, that sense of someone just behind you, unseen but near. You know, the stories are not just stories. They are memory's way of holding the dark. Outside, the frost sparkles where footsteps should be, though none remain. The offering bread is gone, leaving only a few crumbs and a faint scent of apple. You feel a strange peace settle over the cottage, gentle, watchful, unfinished. Soon the sun will rise fully, and the villagers will laugh, pretending the night was only superstition. But the elders will glance toward the hills, toward the unseen roads, and nod to themselves. They know the truth the wind keeps, that every autumn, for one thin breath between seasons, the walls of the world remember how to open. You breathe in the chill air and close your eyes. The world feels different now, quieter, wider, more fragile. The fire hums low, the last ember winking out, and somewhere, just beyond the horizon of sound, something whispers your name, softly, almost kindly, as the veil folds itself shut once more. The night has grown colder. The stars above Era hang sharp and silver, scattered like shards of bone across the black sky. The fires from the hills have dimmed, their glow hidden behind a quilt of fog. Only the scent of ash remains, and the rustle of figures moving in the mist. You can hear them before you see them. Small feet on frozen earth, low laughter muffled by cloth, a rhythm of footsteps weaving through the village lanes. Children, though they no longer look like children. Their faces smeared with soot, their eyes ringed in shadow, their small shapes swallowed by hides and tattered cloaks. They are the living pretending to be dead. It is safer that way. When the veil between worlds thins and spirits walk, it is better not to look alive. You stand at the doorway, watching. A boy passes, his head covered by the skull of a ram. The horns gleam faintly in the firelight as he carries a torch nearly as tall as himself. A girl follows, her dress turned inside out, a trick against the fair folk who dislike what's inverted or strange. Another child drags a string of hollow gourds, their faces carved with crude grins. Inside, the candlelight flickers like captive souls. The villagers call this the guise, a ritual of disguise, a dance of deception, old as the fear it was born from. For centuries, they believed the wandering dead could mistake a body for a vessel, a home to crawl back into. So they blurred the line between self and shadow, between the living and the gone. It begins softly, as all rituals do. A mother dips her fingers into the cold ash of the hearth and smears it across her child's cheeks. She whispers a blessing, or perhaps an apology. Then the child turns, now half spirit, half human, unrecognizable in the dim. It is a protection through transformation. You wonder if the spirits are fooled, or if they play along, amused by the effort. The torches sway through the fog, each one a small sun in the endless dark. From somewhere deeper in the night, a drum beats, slow and deliberate, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The children begin to sing. Their voices rise in uneven chorus, thin and haunting, a mix of song chant, and laughter. It echoes off the thatched roofs, carrying across the fields where the dead once walked. Hide your faces, hide your eyes. Samhain's breath is cold and wise. Light your fire, feed the flame, call your dead, but not by name. It's both a warning and a lullaby. You feel its rhythm in your chest, something primal, protective, but laced with unease. Because the song does not promise safety, it promises recognition, that the living remember and the dead are never far. The masks grow stranger as the night deepens. Some wear animal hides, the fur matted and damp with dew. Others wear veils made of reeds or faces carved from bark. One man paints his eyes white with clay and moves like smoke, silent and slow, trailing feathers that whisper with every step. He could be a spirit, or he could be your neighbor. Here, such distinctions have ceased to matter. The masks have power. You can feel it in the air, that electric tension between reverence and fear. Behind each disguise lies the same fragile truth, that belief itself is protection, that if you act as though you belong to the dark, perhaps the dark will pass you by. In one corner of the village, a bonfire still burns. The old ones sit near it, murmuring to each other as they toss handfuls of herbs into the flames. The smoke curls in colors not entirely of this world: green, violet, gold. The scent is sharp, metallic, almost sweet. A druid stands among them, his face streaked black, his voice deep and soft as thunder. He tells the story of the Pucha, the shapeshifter who rides the wind, wearing faces stolen from the living. He warns that masks are not just to deceive the dead, but to confuse the creatures who imitate them. You can't help but glance over your shoulder. The fog seems to pulse, alive with a faint shimmer of movement. Perhaps it's only the wind. Perhaps it's something older. A woman laughs, high and sudden. Everyone startles. Her mask slips, revealing her mouth, the human warmth beneath. And for that one breath, the world feels thin again, as though unseen eyes have turned to watch. She hurriedly replaces it, her laughter swallowed by silence. Time moves strangely tonight. Minutes stretch, fold, collapse. The torches drift through the mist like stars on water, glowing softly, vanishing one by one. You follow their path out toward the fields, where the fog hangs low and the earth gleams with frost. Beyond the boundary stones, where the tilled soil ends and wild land begins, you see them, shapes at the edge of sight. Too tall, too still, the air thickens with the scent of rain and something older, like iron and moss. For a moment, you think you see faces among the shapes, hollow, pale, rimmed with shadow. They do not approach, they only watch, and perhaps for this one night, that is enough. The villagers say the masks please them, that the dead do not feel mocked, only remembered, that these borrowed faces are a kind of bridge, a gesture across the silence of centuries. Maybe that's why the tradition endures, even now, when faith has turned to history and history to myth. We still wear masks on the night of the dead, still hide behind laughter, still light our small fires against the dark. You return toward the village as dawn begins its slow unfurling, a gray seam opening at the edge of the sky. The fog begins to lift, revealing the remnants of the night's illusions: ash-smeared cheeks, discarded hides, lanterns burned down to stubs, children yawning faces clean again. They will not remember the silence that fell just before dawn, when even the wind dared not breathe. The bonfire burns low. Someone rakes the ashes into a circle, drawing patterns you do not understand. Another takes a handful of soot and marks it on the doorpost, for luck or for warning. The smoke drifts upward, curling through the pale air like a departing spirit, and you realize, as you watch them sweep away the last embers, that the masks were never meant to fool the dead entirely. They were meant for the living, for courage, a reminder that fear itself can be worn and tamed, that in pretending to be monsters, we learn to live with them. The sun finally crests the hills, weak and golden, brushing the roofs with light. The village exhales. The children laugh again, unmasked, running toward the fields. But somewhere in the shadows between cottages, a faint whisper lingers. A voice that does not belong to morning. You do not turn. You know better than to look. The night may be over, but the dark still remembers your face. They came from the sea, not ghosts this time, but men, bronze-shod sandals and crimson banners, the eagle of Rome, glinting like an omen against gray Irish skies. Their language rolled like thunder, foreign and commanding, carried by the same wind that once bore the whispers of druids. The island had seen conquerors before, Norsemen, raiders, kings from across the channel. But Rome was something else. It did not merely take land. It took meaning. The fires of Samhain still burned when they arrived, but lower, cautious. The hilltop flames that once roared to greet the dead now sputtered under the shadow of crosses. The people gathered around them still spoke the old words, the blessings, the protections, the bargains. But their voices were quieter, their glances more furtive. It was the season of endings, and Rome had come to rewrite what it meant to die. You can imagine the first priest standing where once the druids did, his robes white, his hands lifted to a new heaven. He speaks of salvation instead of cycles, of one God instead of many. Yet the villagers listen with the same uneasy awe they once gave to oak and flame. They nod, they bow, they cross themselves, and when the priest turns away, they still cast bread to the shadows, still whisper to the earth. The Romans, ever pragmatic, did not destroy Samhain outright. They absorbed it. They had done this before. In Gaul, in Iberia, in the deserts of Egypt. Wherever they met gods, they renamed them. Wherever they met fire, they sanctified it. Samhain became Feralia to some, the Roman festival of the dead. Others folded it into Lemuria, the night of restless spirits. The dates blurred, the meanings bled together, until what once belonged to the Druids began to speak in Latin. And then came the saints. The church, clever as empire, saw in these rituals not defiance, but opportunity. If the people would not give up their dead, then the church would give them holy names to mourn instead. Pope Boniface declared a new feast, All Saints' Day, to honor every martyr, every blessed soul who had crossed into eternal light. The eve before it, All Hallows' Eve, was meant for vigil and prayer, a night to prepare the living for the company of the saved. But beneath the hymns, something older still flickered. In the Western Isles, the bonfires remained. The masks persisted. Villagers prayed to saints by day and left offerings for their ancestors by night. Children lit lanterns carved from turnips, hollow-eyed and grinning, to keep away both devil and fairy alike. The church called it superstition. The elders called it memory. The blending was not peace. It was camouflage. The old gods learned new names. Brigid, once goddess of hearth and poetry, became Saint Brigid, her feast still marked by fire and milk. Cernunnos, the horned guardian of beasts, disappeared into depictions of the devil. Because what Rome could not sanctify, it demonized. Even Samhain itself, the spirit of the darkening year, was reduced to a season, a whisper in calendars carved by Christian hands. But stories have long memories, and so, under altars and sanctuaries, the old fires smoldered on. There are tales, half church record, half rumor, of monks who kept both gospels and charms in their pockets, who sprinkled holy water and muttered druidic blessings in the same breath, of abbeys where candlelight burned through nights of storm, not just for Christ, but for the unnamed dead still wandering the fields, of bells that rang on Samhain's Eve to ward away spirits, though some said the sound was not meant to drive them off, only to guide them home. Even the air itself changed. The smell of incense mingled with the smoke of peat. The Latin chants rose like mist over stone crosses, etched with spirals older than the faith that claimed them. The people did not forget. They adapted. You can picture it. A hill church built upon a druidic mound. Beneath the altar lies the hollow of an older fire pit, blackened stones still warm with centuries of remembrance. During Mass, the priest raises the chalice and speaks of resurrection. Outside, the wind hums through the grass, carrying the ghosts of languages that once spoke to the moon. Rome had stolen the fire, yes, but fire does not belong to any one god. It only needs breath, belief, and something to burn. There were places where the theft did not hold. In remote glens and wild coasts, the villagers continued their rites, calling them by new names when questioned. They sang psalms instead of invocations, yet their rhythms followed the same pulse. They prayed for saints to guard their thresholds, though they still left out food for travelers. Even the churchmen came to tolerate these small betrayals, so long as the people filled the pews on Sundays, but the boundaries blurred. The night of Holy Vigil became the night of haunted spirits. The eve of All Hallows became the eve of the dead. And in that twilight confusion, the ancient fire found its voice again. There are records from later centuries, sermons, condemnations, warnings of villagers mocking death with costumes and revels, of masked processions, torches, and laughter echoing through graveyards. The church called it desecration, but perhaps it was something else. Perhaps it was memory, dressed now in borrowed robes, but still unmistakably pagan in soul. By the time the empire itself crumbled, Samhain had learned a new language, worn a dozen names, and survived every god that tried to replace it. All Hallows' Eve spread across kingdoms like an ember carried in a pilgrim's cloak, glowing faintly, waiting for breath. In the monasteries, scribes copied gospels by candlelight, their ink drying beside charms written in margins. Keep the door locked till dawn. Bread for the dead. Never call them by name. And somewhere, in a chapel on a lonely coast, the wind slipped through a broken window. It passed over the altar flame, then down through the cracks in the floor to the stones beneath, where the first fire of Samhain still burned, patient and low. Rome had given the night new prayers, but the dark had kept its hunger, so the people kept both, the holy and the haunted, the saint and the shadow. They sang in Latin, and they whispered in the old tongue. And every year, when the nights grew long and thin, they lit their small flames again, not in defiance, but in remembrance, because beneath every empire's hymn, there is an older song, one that never dies, only waits to be heard again. You can hear it now, the slow toll of a bell across the fog. Its sound drifts over thatched roofs and crooked lanes, marking another All-Hallow-Tide. the time when the boundary between this world and the next thins once more, and the living turn their faces toward the unseen. In the small hours, before dawn, the villagers wake to cold hearths and the scent of wax. Tallow candles burn low on windowsills, their smoke curling like pale threads toward the rafters, as though carrying prayers skyward. The church says this is the night to remember the blessed dead, All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day to follow. But beneath the solemn hymns and Latin verses, something older still hums through the dark. The living are not merely mourning, they are bargaining. Outside, the earth glistens with frost. Footsteps echo through narrow lanes. The sound of children moving from door to door, their hands outstretched. They carry small baskets and sing in low, haunting voices. A soul, a soul, a soul cake, please. For a soul on God's sake, please. 1 for Peter, 2 for Paul, 3 for him who saved us all. The words are holy, but the rhythm feels older, more charm than prayer. For each cake, each coin, each crumb offered in the chill night air, a promise is made that the dead shall rest a little easier, that the living will not be taken too soon. Some give gladly, others bolt their doors, muttering that the dead should find their own peace. But still, the song lingers, still the children walk, and when their voices fade down the road, it is said the wind picks up the refrain, carrying it toward the woods. Because even now, the forest listens. In every medieval village, there are those who remember that before there were saints, there were spirits. Before bells tolled for souls, drums beat for ancestors, and though the church sanctified the feast, it could never silence the rustle of leaves or the whisper of something older moving beyond the hedgerows. The priests preach from pulpits about purgatory, a vast waiting place between salvation and damnation. They tell the people that prayers and alms can shorten that waiting, can free the souls still caught between light and shadow. It is a comforting thought, a controlled one. But out in the fields, when mist rolls over the graves, the villagers know better. They have seen shapes flicker in the corners of their eyes. They have heard voices in the wind. They have felt, on nights like this, the press of unseen hands against their doors. So they keep the customs that neither empire nor church could kill. They light fires at the crossroads, so lost souls might find their way home. They leave bread on their tables, milk on their steps. They draw circles of ash on thresholds and whisper the names of those gone before, not as prayers, but as reminders, because remembering keeps the darkness polite. In some towns, the clergy process through the streets with relics, bones of saints, fragments of holy cloth, held high against the night. Behind them, peasants follow with torches and rosaries, their shadows long and trembling. Yet if you listen closely, beneath the Latin chants, you might hear a hum of something else, a tune without words, passed down from the days when people sang to the moon and the fire and the wind. Somewhere in that mingling of hymn and hum, All Souls' Night finds its true voice. It is not quite Christian, not quite pagan, but something in between. A twilight song for both heaven and earth. And as the years pass, the customs evolve, shifting with each generation. What was once offering becomes game. What was once fear becomes ritual. Children, those small keepers of forgotten magic, carry the tradition forward without knowing its roots. They ask for cakes not just for souls, but for fun. Their laughter bright against the dark. Still, something in their eyes, in their sing-song voices, carries the faint echo of reverence. Candles flicker in every window now, The air smells of smoke, bread, and damp leaves. Some say that on this night, purgatory itself opens, not as punishment, but as memory made visible. You might see your grandmother's shadow standing by the gate, or your brother's voice, long dead of fever, whispering through the eaves, not to frighten you, just to be remembered. Inside the church, the bell tolls again, each ring for a soul, each note swallowed by fog. Monks chant through the night, beads clicking softly in their hands. Outside, the villagers wait in silence, watching the candlelight waver through stained glass. Saints painted in rich blues and golds, their eyes too calm, too knowing. For a moment it feels as if the painted figures are listening too. Perhaps even they remember what came before. In the flickering glow, shadows dance along the walls, shifting, bending, whispering. And though the priests will tell you these are tricks of the light, you might feel something brush past you, gentle as a sigh, cold as breath on glass. The church calls this season a time of intercession, but the old ones called it by another name, the listening days, when heaven listens to earth and earth listens back. There are stories of travelers lost in the moors on All Souls' Night, who claimed to hear bells ringing where no church stood, who followed the sound and found only an ancient grove, its trees hung with ribbons, its air filled with unseen music. When they returned, they said they felt lighter, as though something had passed through them, a sorrow, a voice, a soul, and always, as the fires burn low, the question returns, where do the dead truly go? The priests answer with scripture, the villagers answer with song, and somewhere between the two, the truth drifts, weightless as the smoke that curls toward the rafters. When dawn finally comes, frost glitters on the cobblestones, the last candle gutters and dies. The air smells faintly of wax and wood smoke and something else. Sweet, old, impossible to name. The bell tolls once more, but softer now. The souls have been remembered. The prayers have been said, yet the forest still stands at the edge of every village, silent and patient, listening. You look toward it, and for a heartbeat, you think you see a flicker of movement, a pale figure between the trees, watching. It could be a trick of light. It could be memory. It could be the shadow of a god too old for names. The breeze shifts. Leaves stir, and far away, a child begins to sing again. A single line of the old song, carried on the morning wind. A soul, a soul. A soul cake, please. The voice fades, blending with the whisper of branches and the first cry of waking birds. And the world exhales. But somewhere beneath the roots, beneath the chapels and the graves and the centuries of hymns, the old fire still breathes, faint, steady, waiting for night to fall again. You stand at the edge of an autumn field. The corn is dry, whispering like old paper in the wind. The moon above is pale and wide, resting in the smoke of distant fires. You can almost hear them. The echoes of songs, the laughter, the faint, careful prayers of those who came before. The year is young here, on this vast and foreign soil. The old world lies an ocean away. Its stone circles, its sacred hills, its whispering groves. But the people who have crossed the sea have not come empty-handed. They have brought memory, and memory is a kind of fire. They still call it All Hallows, or Halloween in their softer Irish tongues. But beneath the new words, the old name breathes, Samhain. The feast of endings, of beginnings, of thresholds, the night when the veil thins and the dead walk close. In the fields of the new world, the ritual must change shape to survive. Turnips, once carved into grim faces to ward away wandering spirits, are rare and hard to carve. But pumpkins, vast and hollow and glowing like captured suns, are everywhere. So the old fire finds a new vessel. Knives flash in the candlelight. Hands scoop pale strings and seeds, slick and shining like veins of gold. Faces emerge, some laughing, some monstrous, some almost human. And as each is lit, the fields fill with orange fire. The settlers say the pumpkins are only for decoration, but deep down something older hums. They remember the tales of Jack of the Lantern, the cursed soul who tricked the devil himself, doomed to wander with only a burning coal inside a hollowed root. Now Jack's story flickers in 1,000 windows, smiling in the dark. You walk between those glowing faces, their light wavering across wooden fences and haystacks. The air smells of cider and smoke, apples baking in ash. Children run with shrieks and laughter, masks on their faces, echoes of the old disguises meant to confuse the dead. Their feet scatter dry leaves. Their breath turns to mist. They are playing, yes, but they are also remembering, though they don't know it, because games are just old rituals softened by time. The frontier towns are small, scattered, built from rough timber and hope. But even here, the past creeps in through the cracks. The Irish tell stories by the fire of the Dullahan, the headless rider who carries his skull beneath his arm. The Scots speak of will-o'-the-wisps, ghostly lights that lead travelers astray. The Germans bring tales of the Nachtseher, the corpse that feeds upon its own death shroud until it rises again. And so, in these new lands, the old world begins to bloom again. Wild, restless, uninvited. But something happens here that did not happen there. In the old world, Halloween was a night of reverence, fear mixed with faith, a time to remember the dead. In the new world, it begins to change. It becomes louder, brighter, more alive. The danger fades, replaced by delight. Children run freely where once the fearful stayed close to firelight. Laughter replaces ritual, masks replace mourning, and yet the pulse of Samhain still beats beneath it all, softly, like a heart beneath the soil. Listen. Somewhere beyond the laughter, a wind rises. It moves through the corn, through the pumpkins, through the houses with their candle-lit windows. It carries voices, the faint trace of prayers in Gaelic and Latin, and words too old for either tongue. The settlers pause in their work. For a moment, they remember the sound of church bells tolling across stone villages. They remember the taste of soul cakes, the flicker of bonfires against black hills. They remember the feel of standing on ground their ancestors once called sacred. But here, in this wide and untamed land, they must make new sacred places. A hearth becomes a temple, a pumpkin becomes a guardian, a child's laughter becomes a spell against the dark. They say the spirits followed them across the sea, that the ocean was no barrier for the restless dead. Perhaps that is why the fields sometimes feel too quiet, why lantern flames bend as if something unseen walks past. In some towns, people swear they see pale shapes among the corn rows, their faces indistinct, their movements like smoke. They never come closer. They never need to. As the years turn, Halloween spreads through the colonies. It slips from one settlement to another like wind through autumn grass. By the 1800s, it is both sacred and silly, a festival of mischief and memory. Young men carve crude faces into pumpkins and set them along dark roads to frighten travelers. Girls light candles and whisper charms, trying to glimpse their future husbands in mirrors. Farmers set extra places at the table, just in case an ancestor comes calling. And somewhere, in the hush between midnight and dawn, a single candle flickers behind a window pane, burning for a name no one remembers. You wander down a dirt path, through drifting fog. Lanterns flicker on fence posts like tiny suns. The ground is cool beneath your feet, the air sweet with rotting apples and rain. Ahead, a farmhouse glows golden through the mist. Inside, laughter spills like music. A woman hums an old tune from home, a song of harvest and loss. Her voice trembles but never breaks. Outside, the pumpkins grin in silent vigil. Their firelight dances across the grass, spilling over your hands, your breath, your thoughts. You wonder what these settlers would think if they saw what Halloween would become. Cities filled with lights and masks, millions of lanterns glowing on a single night. Would they recognize it? Would they feel that same ancient pulse beneath the laughter? Would they whisper, "Ah, yes"? Samhain still breathes. You close your eyes. The sounds of the night gather around you. The chirp of crickets, the hiss of wind in dry stalks, the low hum of something vast and timeless moving beneath the earth. A candle flickers. A seed crackles in the fire, and you can almost feel it. The heartbeat of all those who came before, still burning within every flame, every carved smile, every whisper of October wind. The pumpkin's grin glows brighter now, as though remembering the turnip's skull, the druid's fire, the chant carried over sea and soil. And in that glow, you glimpse the truth of it. Rituals never die. They simply change their masks. The horizon fades to black, and the last of the fire turns to ember. Smoke curls skyward, thin as a prayer, and beneath the vast American moon, the old gods sleep. Not gone, not dead, only dreaming, waiting for the next harvest to call them home. You have heard the name before, Jack, a name that drifts through centuries like smoke. It hides behind stories, behind jokes, behind grinning lanterns on autumn porches. But once, long before pumpkin patches and porch lights, it belonged to a man. They say he was clever, too clever, a blacksmith, a trickster, a drinker with a tongue sharp enough to cut rope. One night, as the legend goes, he met the devil himself in a tavern, and even hell underestimated him. The story begins with a wager. A coin, a drink, a promise made over ale and smoke. Jack persuaded the devil to pay his tab. And when the devil turned himself into a coin to settle the debt, Jack pocketed him beside a small silver cross. Trapped, powerless, the devil seethed in darkness, and Jack, laughing softly, walked home under the crooked moon. But every trick has its price. When Jack finally died, heaven refused him for his sins. Hell rejected him for his insolence, and so the devil tossed him a single burning coal. A light to wander by, and nothing more. Jack hollowed out a turnip, placed the ember inside, and began his endless walk through the world. He became Jack of the Lantern, Jack-o'-lantern, neither saved nor damned, a soul with no home but the dark. Now centuries later, his story flickers on every doorstep. Each grinning face, each candle's tremble, is an echo of that exile. The fire inside the pumpkin is not mere decoration. It is memory, burning quietly against the cold. You walk through the streets of a small 19th century village. The wind carries laughter and the faint smell of smoke. Children dart through shadows, their masks crude and uncanny, sacks over their heads, charcoal for eyes and mouths. They knock on doors, demanding sweets or coins, their voices high and wild. "Give us a treat, or we'll play a trick." Their words are playful, but the rhythm feels ancient, like the old soul chants of Ireland, softened by time. They call it Mischief Night now, an echo of Samhain's freedom, when boundaries loosened, when the living and dead alike could cross the line and roam. Every candle, every game, Every prank holds a shadow of that first bargain. Jack's defiance turned to laughter. His curse turned to celebration. His lonely flame multiplied 1,000-fold, glowing in the hands of children who no longer remember why they carry it. But the land remembers. In farmhouses, the old ones still whisper the tale by firelight. They tell the children not to mock the wandering souls, not to leave the lantern unlit after midnight. They say that if the flame goes out, Jack's spirit might mistake your home for his own, seeking warmth he can never find. And once he crosses your threshold, he never leaves. Outside, the wind hums through the cracks. Pumpkin faces stare from windows, their grins warped by flickering light. Some smile sweetly, some leer with jagged teeth. All of them burn with that same strange devotion. A charm against loneliness, a bargain renewed each autumn. In the distance, the town's church bell tolls. Its sound rolls through the valley, mingling with laughter and the rustle of leaves. Once, those bells were meant to ward away the restless dead. Now they are only music, a backdrop for parades and costumes and the thrill of pretending. You pause beside a fence post. A single lantern burns there, set upon the ground. Its face is simple, 2 triangles, 1 crooked smile. The flame inside sputters, then steadies. You watch it for a long moment, feeling its warmth, wondering if the story of Jack was meant as warning or comfort. Perhaps both, because the truth beneath the tale is older than Ireland, older than Christianity, older even than fire itself. It is the truth that light must always walk beside darkness, and that every trick is a prayer for control over what cannot be tamed. The children run past again, their footsteps soft on the cold earth, their laughter fading into mist. They are not afraid of ghosts anymore, but something in the air still listens. Something in the quiet between footsteps and wind remembers. There are stories, even now, of lanterns that wander fields alone, their flames swaying as though carried by invisible hands. Farmers see them in the distance and cross themselves. Travelers follow them and vanish into the fog. The old people say that's Jack. Still searching, still walking, still trying to find a home that will open its door. And maybe that's why we carve these faces year after year. Maybe it's not only to scare away the dark, but to welcome him, to keep him company, to remind him that he's not forgotten. You imagine him now, a tired figure in tattered clothes, his light flickering low, his steps slow but unending. He pauses beside a farmhouse, seeing his own grin reflected in the pumpkin's glow. For a moment he almost smiles, then the wind rises. The flame inside both lanterns dances in the same rhythm. One living, one eternal. The tricksters and the dead, the laughter and the fear, the games and the legends, they all blur together, just as they always have. Because the difference between a joke and a spell is only the intention of the heart that speaks it. You walk on. Leaves scatter across your path like ghosts of paper. Pumpkins gleam like tiny suns, their light trembling in the breath of the night. Behind you, the echo of a child's voice drifts through the wind. Trick or treat, trick or treat. But it doesn't sound playful now. It sounds ancient, like the echo of something that never truly stopped asking. Somewhere, out beyond the last lantern's glow, a figure keeps walking, his light dim, his journey endless. And for one heartbeat, you think you see it flicker beside you, a small silent flame in the corner of your vision. Then it's gone. Only the pumpkins remain, smiling through the dark. Only the wind, sighing through their hollow mouths. And somewhere far away, a wandering soul carries his candle still, a whisper of warmth against eternity. a promise that every fire, once lit, will always find a way to burn again. The old gods were never truly banished. They simply learned to smile behind plastic masks. By the turn of the 20th century, the ancient fires of Samhain had migrated from hilltops and hearths to quiet suburban streets. The Night of Spirits had become a carnival of disguises, paper skeletons, and store-bought laughter. But beneath the neon and nylon, something old continued to breathe. In America, Halloween grew from the soil of nostalgia and fear. Immigrants brought the whispers of Ireland and Scotland, stories of Jack, of wandering souls, of the thin veil between worlds. They found in this new land wide fields and deeper nights. The turnip became the pumpkin, the fire became the porch light, and the prayer for safety became a game. Trick or treat, a child's chant, harmless in sound, yet its rhythm still carried the echo of offerings left to unseen guests. The world was changing. Electric lights drowned out the stars. Horses vanished. Smokestacks rose. Cities swallowed forests and fields where spirits once roamed freely. But even amidst progress, the human heart still sought mystery. The masks grew brighter, the shadows thinner, but the hunger remained. By the 1920s, Halloween was both spectacle and rebellion. Street corners swarmed with children in paper costumes and soot-smeared faces. Candles flickered in windows, their flames warped by glass and electric glow. Newspapers fretted about Halloween mischief, broken fences, stolen gates, overturned wagons. Communities, tired of pranks and chaos, tried to tame the night. So they did what humans always do when faced with ancient forces. They commercialized it. Parties replaced bonfires. Store shelves filled with masks of witches, devils, and ghosts, mass-produced shadows of sacred fear. The night was no longer about surviving the dead. It was about pretending to be one. And yet, in every plastic grin, in every flickering candle within a pumpkin's grin, something true still lingered. The 1950s turned Halloween into ritual comfort, a night of children in capes and cowboy hats, of safe suburban streets lined with jack-o'-lanterns. Television beamed its orange glow into every home, declaring the holiday innocent, playful, and American. But in the spaces between commercials, between the laughter and candy wrappers, the dark old pulse of Samhain still whispered, because the masks, no matter how cheap, still changed the wearer. A child slipping into a ghost costume felt something stir, a thrill, a power, a connection to the unseen. For one night, identity could blur. One could be anyone or no one. The costume became both shield and invitation, just as it had been for the Celts, who smeared ash upon their faces to confuse the dead. Outside the city lights, in small towns and forgotten roads, people still left candles by their windows. They said it was decoration, but their grandparents knew better. The candle burned for remembrance. It said to the spirits, "We have not forgotten." The door is still open. The 1970s brought back the darkness. Horror found its voice again. Cinema's gleam became the new campfire. Films like Halloween and Night of the Living Dead reminded the world that the thin veil could still tremble. The masked figure returned, no longer in worship, but in warning. The holiday that had once belonged to spirits now belonged to symbols of human fear. And the line between both grew wonderfully, terribly thin in the glare of the 21st century. Halloween stands transformed, yet unchanged. The fires are digital now, glowing from screens and LED bulbs. Costumes arrive in boxes. Candies bear logos instead of blessings. But beneath the hum of the city, beneath the buzz of porch lights, the old exchange still takes place. You open your door, and a small figure stands there. A ghost, a skeleton, a creature with plastic fangs. They hold out a bag, eyes wide, waiting for your offering. Trick or treat, they say. It is the same chant, whispered under Celtic moons thousands of years ago. The same plea for safe passage through the night. You drop candy into their bag, and they vanish into the dark. Another spirit appeased, and for a moment, you wonder if you've just given something more than sugar. If in that simple act, the old covenant has been renewed again. Look closer. Behind the masks of superheroes and witches, the eyes that stare back at you are the same as those who once danced around ancient fires. The same human longing burns there. To belong, to remember, to be frightened and freed by the same ritual. Cities may shine with false daylight, but Halloween remains the night that remembers darkness as friend, not enemy. Neon pumpkins replace the moon, yet their glow mimics her watchful eye. And though the world calls it play, somewhere in the marrow of the night, the spirits know the game for what it truly is. A pact still honored. Every porch light is a lantern. Every mask is a prayer. Every piece of candy an offering, disguised as kindness. We are still feeding the dark, still keeping it close, so it will not grow hungry enough to come inside. And when the streets fall silent, when the laughter fades, and the candles gutter low, there's always that one last flame, a single candle left burning in a window. It flickers faintly against the wind, its light neither ancient nor modern, but both. Because whether it burns in a carved pumpkin, a church candle, or a computer screen, it is still the same flame that Jack once carried, the same fire that leapt from Samhain's hilltop bonfires to suburban porches, the same warmth that binds the living to their shadows. So when you walk through the city at midnight, past rows of glowing faces and whispering trees, remember what you are really celebrating. Not fear, not fun, but survival. The long, unbroken memory of light in the dark. And somewhere, in the quiet beyond the streets, beneath the hum of electric wires and the cold glow of screens, a forgotten God smiles. He sees that his people have not forgotten him, only disguised him, as they always have. And as the night deepens, he walks unseen among the crowd, passing beneath paper ghosts and LED stars, his reflection flickering in the orange glass of every glowing pumpkin. The candle still burns. The masks still whisper, and the old fires, though buried beneath concrete and circuitry, still remember their names. You stand at a window, watching the world shimmer with light. Paper ghosts sway on balconies. Plastic bats cling to glass. Somewhere, faint music drifts, half pop song, half ancient chant, and for a breath, you wonder if the world has forgotten what it truly celebrates, or if it remembers too well. Halloween no longer belongs to one place or one people. It drifts, unanchored across continents and screens. A ritual reborn in 1,000 tongues. It glows from Tokyo's towers and hums in Mexico's graveyards. It slips into cafes in Paris, bazaars in Istanbul, alleyways in Seoul. A single night, wrapped in shadow and light, weaving ancient and new like a charm. In Japan, they call it Haro-uin, a festival of color and mimicry. Crowds fill Shibuya Crossing in a tide of masks. Zombies, samurai, anime spirits, fox demons from old shrine myths. Neon cuts through the smoke of incense. Beneath it all, the same rhythm beats, the pulse of borrowed fear, of celebration shaped by shadows. The people laugh, take pictures, pose, but in a quiet temple garden, someone lights a candle for their ancestors. It flickers the same way it once did on Celtic hillsides, when the veil thinned and the dead walked home. Across the ocean in Mexico, another fire burns. Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, has always been its own song. Yet lately, its music hums alongside Halloween's ghostly tune. Sugar skulls smile beside pumpkins, altars bloom with marigolds and candles, with names whispered through smoke. Here death is not chased away, but welcomed, fed, honored, and still. The air feels the same, soft, trembling, alive with the presence of what was once feared. From the Carpathian villages of Romania to the lantern-lit streets of London, the old fire has never truly gone out. In Transylvania, where fog curls like old blood around castle stones, tourists wear vampire cloaks and toast to ghosts. They laugh, but the hills listen. The wind carries older songs, stories of wolves and widows and whispered prayers to saints who no longer answer. The same bonfire that once burned for Samhain burns now in their eyes, reflected through camera lenses, neon lights, and hotel glass. Halloween survives because it never pretended to be perfect. It bends, it adapts, it hides its bones beneath sequins and sugar. It wears the language of each land like another mask, and yet, under every version, it remains the same story. Light against the dark, memory against forgetting, life holding hands with death, pretending not to be afraid. In cities, it has become performance. Parades thunder with laughter. Children parade in tiny wings and painted faces. Adults drink under plastic cobwebs and glowing skeletons. Yet every decoration, every flickering candle, every black cat silhouette is an echo of something older. A charm, a sigil, a protection. We decorate because deep down, we still believe the night listens. We light our homes because some part of us fears what waits beyond them. And perhaps the spirits too remember. Maybe they wander through skyscrapers and suburbs, curious. Maybe they slip through doors left open by revelers, drawn by the warmth, by the laughter that sounds almost like prayer. Perhaps the dead no longer frighten us because they have learned to join the dance. On an island in the Pacific, a lantern floats upon black water. In a Scottish glen, a lone candle glows in a church ruin. In Los Angeles, a child in a skeleton suit carries a plastic pumpkin. All these lights, scattered across the world, are fragments of the same fire. The fire that first rose from the hills of air. The fire that taught humanity to fear and then to remember, because Halloween is not a single story. It is the river that carries them all. It flows through centuries of change, through conquest and belief, through laughter and blood and sugar. It has worn the names of saints and demons. It has hidden in churches and danced in city streets. It has survived every attempt to bury it, because it was never just a festival. It was a reflection of us. The masks we wear today are not to hide from the dead, but to remember how to face them. We dress as ghosts, as monsters, as witches, not to mock them, but to join them, to stand with them in that thin place between worlds and whisper. We remember. Look closer, and you'll see it everywhere. In a child's painted grin, in the flicker of an electric candle, in the hum of the wind through a city that doesn't sleep. The same ancient current hums beneath it all. The same pulse that once told the druids when the year was dying, that the veil was thinning, that the world would soon begin again. The fire beneath the hills has traveled far, but it still knows its way home. And though the world believes it has changed, Halloween has only learned new words for the same spell. Orange and black, light and dark, laughter and fear. Every year the same story retold in a different tongue. Every mask a prayer to the unknown. Somewhere, on this night, someone will look into the flame. A candle, a pumpkin, a phone screen, and feel it. That soft ache of something ancient staring back. They'll think it's nostalgia, but it's not. It's memory. It's the ghost of the first fire, the one that burned when the world was still learning how to hope. So the festival lives on, crossing oceans, climbing skyscrapers, settling in hearts that never knew its name. It wears laughter as its cloak, light as its weapon, and the dark as its oldest friend. And when the night ends, when the candles melt into silence and the masks are laid aside, you'll feel it, that quiet, hollow warmth in your chest, the knowledge that for one night each year, the world stands together at the edge of the veil and listens. Because no matter how bright the cities shine, no matter how far we wander from the fields of air, the old fire still burns. Not in temples, not in churches, but in us. The festival never died. It only changed its face, the same way we do. And as dawn rises, soft and gold, the last candle sighs, its smoke curling upward like a ghost at peace, returning once more to the fire beneath the hills. It begins again, as it always does, quietly. The wind turns colder, tasting faintly of apples and ash. Leaves loosen from their branches, spiraling like lost prayers. Candles appear in windows, pumpkins glow from porches, children whisper of monsters, adults smile, pretending they don't still believe. And somewhere, beneath it all, something ancient begins to stir. You feel it before you see it, that subtle shifting in the air, the moment when night deepens too quickly, when a single candle's flame seems to burn with memory. It is not fear, not exactly, but recognition. For this night, this festival, this whisper through time, it does not belong to one faith or another. It belongs to the pulse that has always lived inside humanity, the need to face the dark and call it holy. Once it was Samhain, the Celtic gate of endings. Then All Hallows Eve, the church's borrowed prayer for the dead. Now it is Halloween, a chorus of laughter, masks, and light. But beneath every costume and candle, the same rhythm still beats. The rhythm of return, because the dead do not truly leave. They drift, soft as mist, between the words we say and the silences between them. They linger in songs we can't forget, in the scent of burning leaves, in the ache that comes when a name passes through memory like smoke. The Celts called it the thinning of the veil. Others call it the crossing. It is the space where time folds in on itself, where the harvest ends and the dark begins, where souls who have gone find their way home, if only for a night. Listen. You might hear them if you are still enough. The footsteps just beyond the edge of hearing, the faint laugh of someone long gone, the shift in the shadows that never quite makes sense. Science will tell you it's nothing, but your bones remember otherwise. In villages across the world, the rituals continue, disguised as celebration. A candle in a pumpkin, a sweet left on a grave, a door left slightly ajar, small gestures, old as fire, new as breath. We perform them without knowing why. Yet some part of us understands. We are not just honoring the dead. We are keeping balance with them. Because if the living forget to remember, the dead begin to fade. And in fading, they take something of us with them. So we light candles. We tell ghost stories, we hang lanterns and bake bread and whisper to the dark, not because we fear what waits there, but because we wish to be known by it. Every year when the world leans toward winter, this quiet covenant renews itself. The harvest is gathered, the fields left bare, the air grows still as if listening, and then comes that night, that sacred, foolish, beautiful night. The one where children wear masks and knock on doors, pretending to be what they are not. And the spirits perhaps walk among them, pretending to be what they once were. Maybe you have seen them, A shadow that lingers too long, a chill that moves through an empty room, a voice that calls your name softly, with love or longing. They come not to frighten but to remember, to remind you that the veil between worlds is not a wall, but a curtain of breath. The ancients feared this night. We celebrate it, yet both are acts of reverence. Both are acknowledgments that we are not alone. In Mexico, marigolds bloom and graves glow with candlelight. In Ireland, fires still burn on the hills. In America, doorbells ring like tiny bells to wake the night. Across the globe, billions of hearts, unknowingly, collectively, beat to the same ancient rhythm. And the spirits? They follow the sound. They drift through cities, through forests, through the hum of electricity and wind. They pass through glass and time, unseen, but felt. They find us in the quiet after laughter, in the spaces between one heartbeat and the next. And though we no longer speak their names aloud, they know we still remember. You might think Halloween is human invention, but perhaps it is theirs. Perhaps it is the one night they invented for us. A night to bridge the silence, to let us laugh at death, so we might learn to live beside it. The night grows deeper now. Outside, the last trick-or-treaters vanish into darkness. The streets fall quiet except for the whisper of leaves and distant wind. Somewhere, a candle still burns. Its flame small but steady. And if you look into it long enough, you might see the world as it truly is, not divided into living and dead, but woven together, a tapestry of echoes, breath, and light. For the festival never ended. It only learned to hide in plain sight, in the glow of streetlights, in the scent of smoke and sugar, in the laughter that carries something ancient within it. You close your eyes. The air hums faintly, like a memory trying to speak. Every year, it returns. The quiet heartbeat of the harvest, the shimmer between worlds, the old promise renewed. And somewhere, in that vast unseen place where time folds into forever, the spirits wait, not in sorrow, not in anger, only in patience. They wait for the door to open again, for the smoke to rise, for the laughter to begin, for the candle's soft flicker to call them home. And when it does, when the veil thins once more, you will feel it too. The pulse beneath the world, the hum of something eternal, the truth that no one really leaves. The fire still burns beneath the hills. The veil still trembles like breath on glass. And somewhere in the darkness, the spirits still wander, smiling, listening, waiting for the next night the living remember their names.